Namaste, beloveds. I am so thrilled to finally be back here on European soil, and I'm actually sending you this from my home in Wales. And you know, a few weeks ago I was in Australia and was giving the No Ego retreat, and I mentioned that on Facebook, and someone asked me the question, well, what do you mean by the ego? Are you referring to arrogance? And I realized that most people don't have a clue what I'm referring to when I'm talking about the ego, and yet this is the single source of any suffering you've ever had in your life. It has become from this false identity that we've all stepped into and taken up residence in. And so I thought I'd just send you this little video and share with you about this no ego work, because actually it is the most profound work that we offer in the journey. And it's work that I live, eat, breathe every day. And you need only speak to anyone who's been through the No Ego retreat, and they will tell you, besides it being the most joyous and most in-depth retreat they've ever been to and the greatest spiritual fire, they will say it was the most liberating week of their lives. And the reason that they say this, and they still extol the praises, because people still keep coming back to the No Ego retreat, and it's work that I do on myself, that Kevin does on himself every day. Every day it's a living, breathing teaching that's birthing new teaching and new work. And then the ego is actually, it started forming when you were extremely young, not long after you were born, where mistakenly you took residence in a false identity, where you identified and believed that you are your mind. You identified with your body, you identified with your emotions, and you took up residence in this false identity. And what took place is there was a deep need to feel safe, a deep fear of death. And most of our ego patterns, what other people might term as our personality traits, are actually drives that we have to drive us to get approval, to get people to love us. They're drives to understand what is happening in life and to keep ourselves safe. They're drives to get control so that others can be controlled and that we can control ourselves, to keep ourselves safe. And all of the ego patterns are ways that we are driven to keep this body and this being safe, and also to get the love and connection that we're seeking. And so what happens is we make this initial mistake of identifying with our bodies, with our minds, with our emotions, and we create a false identity. An identity that we're not aware that we're doing this, but that we take up residence in. And that false identity, it keeps us feeling separate from one another, from God, and mainly from our own selves, from the enlightened awareness that is our own soul. And so for the rest of our lives, we spend most of our lives trying somehow to get in touch with our own soul, to come home to the enlightenment, to the freedom, to the love that we are. And yet we're looking outside for this that is the truth of who we are. And so at the No Ego retreat, what you're doing is you're diving deep inside yourself, and you're uncovering all these unique patterns that you uniquely run. Not that I necessarily run, but that you uniquely run. So it may be that you're identified with emotions and getting love. And so you may be giving to others and serving them and trying to help them and lift them up and flattering them and making them feel good just to get some sort of love back, always seeking approval. Or perhaps you've given up on love, and maybe instead you're looking for some way to achieve something so that people admire you. And so you find yourself on some sort of trap where you're always having to be the best student, and be the best at sport, and be the best at work, and be the best in your parents' eyes, in the school's eyes, in your friends' eyes, and scrambling, always trying to make a success out of your life, to achieve something, all the while feeling internally like you're a failure. Or perhaps you felt like you want to be loved because you're unique or different or special. And so you've cultivated aspects of your life where you felt you were creative or different or dressed differently, or that you're artistic in some way, or maybe you want to be seen for how deeply you feel in life, what a deep, sensitive person you are. And so there are all these different strategies to get this love, to get the approval, to get the connection. Or perhaps you came in and you felt like if only I could understand what's going on, what the nature of life is. If I could only understand it, finally I could relax and be safe. And yet you look to the mind to get all the answers, and yet you never feel like you're going to have all the answers because you can't trust the mind. Because the mind is constantly shifting and changing. You may believe you absolutely understand something, and the next moment you doubt that you've got it right. And so you're constantly in a state of anxiety, a constant state of seeking knowledge, understanding. Or maybe it's not just knowledge you want, but you want the skill to keep yourself safe. You want to be competent at work. You want to be competent at raising your children. You want to be really good and get it right so that you'll be safe, but never believing that you're competent enough, never believing you're going to get it right enough, never believing that you have all the understanding you need to live a safe life and to keep your family safe. And so there's this constant scrambling, internal anxiety. Oh my God, what if I get it wrong? Someone could get hurt. Or maybe you're so afraid that you're constantly in activity. You don't know how to stop. You're either on Facebook, or you're on the phone, or you're doing some activity in life, skiing or sport, or maybe going to the movies. You're constantly keeping your mind occupied, and you're being occupied. God forbid you should stop and actually just feel what's going on, because if you did, then terror would arise. And so one of the ways that we avoid feeling any of the things that I've discussed right up to now is we throw ourselves into motion. We try to get more and new and different experience of life, different knowledge. And so we're constantly scrambling to get life experience. And all of it in an avoidance of meeting the fear, the essential fear for our lives. And also it may be that you've become very identified with your body, and you're feeling like you've got to get somehow control, because this is a dog-eat-dog world. And if you're not in control, well then, you could get hurt, your families could get hurt. And so you learn to develop strategies to get over control, using your anger or your domination to get people to do what you want them to do and to make yourself do what you want to do. Or perhaps the control that you're trying to get in control over your own emotions. There may be a fear that, oh my God, if they really came up, if my emotions were allowed to be experienced, I would be out of control and I would get hurt. And so there's a fear of confrontation, a fear of anger coming up, a fear of if anger came up, I'd lose it and someone would get killed. Or it could be that it's the kind of control that's here is a perfectionism, that I have to really do everything perfectly in order that I make myself worthy of God's love, to make myself deserving of life. And so a constant perfectionism, and yet a feeling I'm never perfect enough. I'm not getting it right. And so beating yourself up constantly internally, where a voice inside is constantly telling you how you're never going to get it right. It's not good enough. No matter how hard you try, it's never going to be perfect enough. And then there's that internal devil on your shoulder, and then the external expression of that, where you're correcting other people, trying to make sure they get it right, so everybody will be perfect, and never feeling like it's perfect enough, and feeling like you're internally like someone's got a soda pop bottle, and they've shaken it, and it's all inside, but externally, it can't get out. And so all of us have different drives driving us, and different ways that we avoid literally meeting the emotions that we're terrified of meeting. And so at the No Ego Retreat, what we're really doing is, from that deep way that we work in the journey, we're uncovering these deep patterns of fixation where we have taken up residence in a false identity and suddenly began to believe that's who we are. And then we realize, I've been living a lie my whole life. So there's this longing to liberate yourself. There's this longing to clear this whole lie out so that you can open into that authenticity that is who you really are, to the divine potential, to the love, the joy that is the truth of who you are. And the truth of the matter is, these patterns never have been who you are. And you may think that, well, that's identifies who I am, all those ways of being and acting. But what happens is, you see in the No Ego Retreat that actually all those patterns are one big lie that you bought into. And so at the No Ego Retreat, it's called No Ego because you recognize the whole thing was based on a mistake, on a mistaken lie where you took up residence in this false identity and then lived your life as if that was who you are. And then, haven't you ever felt that? Haven't you ever felt that there's something greater inside? That there's this divine potential? That there's something, if only you could get access to it, that freedom, that love, the truth of who you are. And yet, you felt somehow trapped. And the No Ego Retreat is about bursting free from this trap of this lie that we've lived in. And so when I'm talking at the front of the room and I mention it will be the most liberating 7 days of your life, it will be. Because you will be liberating yourself from all these ways you've had of keeping yourself small, of holding yourself back, of living from only a tiny portion of the huge potential that is who you are. And yes, you will laugh more than you've ever laughed in your life till you're falling off your chair laughing. Because it's as easy to laugh the ego away as to cry it away. And you know what? You will cry more than you've ever cried in your life, because when you recognize, oh my God, I thought this was who I am, and it was just a mistake. And the recognition of that and the letting go of that. And it's such a profound realization to discover the freedom that is your own self. And so this is really an ancient teaching, a Sufi teaching, that was originally given as a path to enlightenment, to realizing the truth of who you really are, to living from the freedom of who you are. So this is not work for those of casual interest. This is for people who have a ferocious fire inside, who say, enough. I want to live authentically from the truth of who I really am. And so I welcome you with all my heart to my favorite retreat, to Kevin's favorite retreat, and into the fire of this work that will be the most liberating week of your life. And so I look forward to and hope that I will see you there. And I hope that you can get a place, because we have limited space. And until I do see you, and I hope I'll see you on the rest of the tour as well, until then, I send you all my love. A deep, heartfelt namaste from my heart.